We're going to start things a little bit differently today. We have a few words that were prepared by Nathan over here. If you want to go ahead.
Okay, I will go ahead. Former President Donald J. Trump was sworn in today for a second time as our 47th president. I'm sure a lot of people out there are ecstatic about him returning to office, and I'm sure there are others who are upset and afraid of what might transpire in this country. I remember when he was first elected. Democrat supporters could not believe it and worried about potential nuclear wars, amongst other things. Then Joe Biden was able to unseat him, and the Republicans fell into a mindset that this country would be gone. The America we all knew and loved would never return unless Donald Trump regained the White House. Well, that moment has arrived, and if you're listening to this, I say that this is not a moment for division, but a chance to rebuild our unity. Neither side should have us hanging on their every word. We should come together and consider that perhaps our differences are due to personal biases that blind us from what is really going on. It's okay to be wrong about things and to admit that our preferred party is not perfect. We do not need to defend each side as if they are a close family member or friend. Instead, I implore all Americans to remember that this country is loved because it allows all of us to pursue the path we best see fit for our happiness, and trying to change that has led us astray.
True.
Powerful.
Play that intro.
Here is a country of great contrast.
Great civilization of antiquity.
A foreign country a step away.
All right, it's the Casa de Cavazos. Justin in Chicago, Aiden and Nathan in Weslaco, Texas, providing for you that Tejano connection to reality. What's up? How's it going? Are you all watching the college football playoff right now?
Somewhat. It just started, but we're going to be focused on the podcast.
Ada is extremely focused on the game.
I'm
She
so
is
focused on
taking
the
notes.
podcast right now.
We're going to be talking about something that's totally not controversial at all. She's going to say, "What the hell?" And it's going to be about something that's going on the TV.
No, it's not one of my teams, so that doesn't happen.
What team is yours for college football?
Kind of Texas, just because I'm in Texas and I'm from Texas, and I remember watching them growing up. But still, I don't get as intense as I do about the Eagles. My throat hurts right now because of yesterday's game. There were a lot of screams, a lot of jubilant screams, fumble recoveries, massive runs by Saquon and Jalen Hurts.
Doesn't your daughter
Yes.
get concerned by all your screaming during football?
She no longer is concerned. She calls them, well, when they're basketball related, she calls them basketball screams. So I guess these are football screams. I will tell you who was concerned, the dogs. They were pretty concerned.
Well, I missed most of that game, but I think our predictions were both right on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it was very dramatic. It became a snow game. The snow started piling up. Then Jalen Hurts injured his knee, which complicated things. And then Philly went up about 28-15, and I thought, okay, we're good. And then we weren't quite good. The Rams started coming back. Unfortunately, I had law school class at the same time. So at the end of the game, I kind of was in law school class and I was kind of watching the game and watching the potential collapse of the Eagles. But it turned out okay. Very dramatic, very fun and stressful game. And the Eagles came out on top.
Does the performance lead you to believe that they're Super Bowl bound? Because Vegas has placed them as the favorites now.
Depends on how Jalen's knee is. I think if Jalen's knee is okay, then they have a good shot at winning the next game. I also think the snow game hurts every team. So if it snows again, that also will complicate things.
Well, the next round is still in Philly, right?
Yes.
It could still be another snow game.
Well, the other snow game also seemed like it affected the Ravens.
Yeah, I watched a lot of that game. I was in class for part of the game, I think. That was also another snow game and another dramatic game. And Lamar had some turnovers. They probably win if Lamar didn't do those turnovers, right?
Well, I mean, I think they win if Mark Andrews doesn't have that weird turnover where it almost seems like he just dropped the ball himself.
Lamar had how many turnovers?
He had the 2 turnovers,
Okay.
but the drive where Mark Andrews just fumbled inexplicably was a drive that I believe was going to lead them to actually take the lead at that point.
Yeah. It was pretty dramatic, even to the last second. Mark Andrews almost converts the 2-point conversion. He had the ball to the point where the commentator said, he got it, and then he dropped it. So,
Yeah, he had actually said that the attempt was good,
Wow.
and then the ball just fell to the ground.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just that cold. Like your hands can't do anything about it. Sometimes
Yeah.
out here, if I forget to wear gloves and it's really cold, I'll be like fumbling with my keys. I can't even feel my
Yeah.
fingers.
You can see that in the Eagles game. You could see that the Rams especially were dropping balls a lot and fumbling a lot because of the coldness.
Unfortunately for Lamar, that keeps that narrative that he can't win the big game. What do you think about that?
I don't think that's true. I mean, I think that was a hard situation for them. And if Mark Andrews makes that catch, it's a tie game. They go to OT and anything can happen.
Well, somebody said that Peyton Manning kind of had the same career arc. It took him a while to win, and he ended up with 2 Super Bowls. And the Ravens players are starting to say that it's inevitable that Lamar will eventually get it done.
I think he'll get it done eventually. I mean, football is really tough. There are always these injuries because it's such a physical game. A lot of it's luck, just getting the right players to be healthy at the right time.
Speaking on injuries, I think the Lions fell to the Commanders because they just couldn't overcome all the injuries they had on defense this year. But Jaden Daniels is probably one of the best rookies we've ever seen. He started at Arizona State and then he went to LSU where he won the Heisman.
Well, I hope the Eagles can beat him. They showed that they could beat them, but Jalen Hurts got injured really early in that last game. Even then, it went down to the wire. So I think if Jalen Hurts is in pretty good shape and it's not a snow game, I think the Eagles have a good shot at it.
What about the secondary? Because if the secondary is not good, Jaden Daniels will definitely carve him up.
The secondary's been playing pretty well, sir.
I saw an injury at the end of that game. Was it not serious?
I haven't heard that there is something that they're really concerned about. I know they have several guys that have been doing pretty well in the secondary. I mean, the big thing is Jalen Hurts. I think if Jalen Hurts can still move, then the offense will be good and everything will kind of work its way out.
Okay, so now that the matchups are set, what are your predictions for championship weekend?
Eagles versus KC to the Super Bowl.
So you're taking KC again.
Yes.
Okay, well, I got Buffalo. I think Josh Allen's just going to do it this year.
You don't think the refs are going to help KC?
I don't think it's going to matter.
All right.
I think Josh Allen's just proven that he can do it. I mean, during the offseason, they lost Diggs, which is a number 1 receiver, and they pretty much filled in those receiver slots with no names, and he's played better than ever. So I just think he's ready for that next step.
Has the whole team changed stylistically too?
Not really. I mean, they've had decent running this whole time, but I said Josh Allen's decision making has really improved.
Speaking of bias, I'm biased towards the Eagles. So it can be hard for me to make these predictions when the Eagles are involved. Maybe the Eagles are just going to get whooped by either AFC team. I don't know.
Well, I think the Eagles should win. So I will have Eagles against Bills. And, well, I guess we'll get back to predictions once we see what happens.
Yeah.
In the championship round.
I mean, I think any defense would have trouble with Josh Allen.
I don't even really watch football, but I feel bad for Josh Allen.
What? Why?
Because he's gotten so close so many times on some pretty good games.
That's sports. I feel like that happens in every sport.
That's Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, that's Charles Barkley. That's James, a.k.a. Jimmy Butler.
Reggie Miller.
Yeah.
Who were Barkley's Chiefs in this metaphor?
I think it would be the Bulls.
But in the Western Conference, I mean, they didn't make all those finals either.
Well, at that time, I think it was a combination of Portland, Seattle, when they still had the Supersonics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I'm not sure if he was in Phoenix at that time, but the Rockets might have been one of those teams as well. And the Jazz.
Well, over here in Chicago, I'm wondering how folks are feeling about Caleb Williams getting picked ahead of Jaden Daniels at this point.
I think Jaden Daniels got put into a really good situation.
Yeah.
That team has usually had a pretty solid defense, and they've had good weapons. They just didn't have the quarterback. So when you put him in there, he was set for success. Granted, he's playing way better than a rookie should play.
Yeah. Speaking of situations, I want to dig at the Cowboys. Because imagine if Dak Prescott had gotten on the Bears, maybe he'd be out of the league by now. Your situation matters, but Jaden Daniels, I think, is a lot more talented than Dak.
Well, he's already matched Dak's playoff wins.
Yeah.
In one postseason.
Yeah, imagine if Jaden Daniels had gone to the Cowboys. Probably get him a Super Bowl.
There was a record that Caleb Williams, I want to look this up.
Oh, yeah. Notre Dame up 7-0.
Oh, I didn't even look the whole time. Look at how good I am. Maybe it's a record for eating the most Chicago hot dogs before a game.
I feel like that would be Joey Chestnut.
During a game. During a game.
Is it like a league record or a Bears record?
It's a Bears record.
I mean, why don't you go to Bears games, though? I feel like if I live in Chicago, I'm going to be going to Bears games.
Well, they might be moving the stadium.
To where?
Suburbs, Arlington Heights, potentially. You know that Soldier Field is the smallest attendance-wise stadium in the NFL.
Well, maybe they don't need more people to get in there.
I don't know why more people would want to watch this terrible team.
I think it's a fun experience. Like, I went to a Texans game way back in the day, like 2006, 2007. No. I think it was like 2003 or 2004. And even though they were terrible and they got beat down by the Colts that game, I had a lot of fun. Like, just being there is a different experience. Even though they were losing, you're like, oh, maybe they'll like score something right here. And you start eating your snacks and getting your beer. And it's a fun experience, even though you lose.
Did you find all his franchise records as a rookie?
No.
Well, I did. He had the most passing touchdowns for a Bears rookie, the most passing attempts, the most completions, the highest passer rating, and the first rookie quarterback with multiple 300-yard passing games.
I would still go to the games if I were you, just for fun.
By the end of the season, it is really cold.
Yeah.
And I don't know about that.
I would wear a parka.
You know where it was really cold today? At the inauguration.
That's why I was indoors.
How cold?
Too cold.
Here it's going to be in the 30s tomorrow, so school is canceled. I don't really understand why. Because maybe the roads are going to be icy is the thought process?
I think so. We don't get that kind of weather down here too often, so if there's a little bit of rain, they kind of want that sun to come out and clear at least a little bit of it.
Yeah, you don't have that infrastructure to salt the roads or to clear anything. Also, like, people don't generally have the clothing needed for those temperatures.
Well, the good thing for me is I have a law school class that starts really early tomorrow, and that helps. So that's the only positive for me, that I don't have to rush home after dropping off my kid.
There's a cold and frigid and steely inauguration today. Did you all watch that live?
No, I was not interested in watching it live.
I did not. I heard a few clips of it from my coworker's phone.
I basically just got some information from CNN.com and Blue Sky and Drudge Report, kind of some highlights about what was being said and what the executive orders are going to be.
Yep, we're going to have the Gulf of America. We're going to have only 2 genders.
I'm not sure why we would need to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico. I'm not sure what the purpose is.
We're going to drill, baby, drill.
Is it like a bullying mentality? Like, I'm going to exert my will on everything, including the names of things?
Pretty much, yeah.
That's weird.
The funny thing is that, like, no other country actually has to recognize this change if it does happen.
What would it matter if they didn't recognize it?
I mean, what would it matter if you change it if it's not even required to be recognized by anybody else?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird stuff to focus on. I will say my kids said that they watched the inauguration at school. I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, it's also weird that they didn't have school off. It's a federal holiday.
Yeah, MLK Day. Yeah, I don't know. I think most of the schools down here didn't have it off.
Why don't you know how you feel about that? It's the president of the United States.
Yeah, but it's like an unhinged person. I don't want my kid watching that. She did say she didn't pay attention, so...
I mean, it is an important event, regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't really want her hearing, like, just unhinged little rants saying that the country is horrible and Biden was horrible and this and that. Like, it's just lies. But like I said, she didn't pay attention, so it's fine.
I was hearing from some sources that internally, like his aides, they had vetted this speech about unity and unification, and it did not take him long to get off script and get
This
real
always
vindictive.
happens. This always happens. This happened to him at the RNC. This happened to him
At the
in
debates,
other instances.
It's always been the same thing. His team has always told him to try to unify the country, and he'll start it and then immediately go into his grievances.
So essentially they tell him to be a normal person, and he's unable to be a normal person. That's my take on it. Because a normal person, normal president would be a uniter, not a divider. You know, you wouldn't be saying everyone's horrible that's not on your side. You wouldn't politicize everything. You wouldn't say that Democrats are causing the wildfires to get out of control. That's just weird. Well, I think the unity message would basically be, I'm not going to go after any of my enemies. I'm not going to politicize the wildfires. I'm not going to condition aid to California based on their policies. Things like that.
Right.
I don't think he's capable of that, though.
Do you feel like your life is going to change for the better or for the worse?
Well, I think that we're ultimately not going to get an improvement in inflation. I don't think we're going to get an improvement in energy prices. I think now we're again ignoring climate change. And so now we're going to increase pollution, increase the usage of fossil fuels. And medicine is really going to get hit too. You're going to have RFK doing all sorts of crazy stuff. The distrust of medicine is going to worsen. And I don't know what's going to happen at the FDA. Like, it may just be completely unhinged.
For those of your friends who are excited about this new administration, what are they excited about?
I think that they think we are doing horribly right now as a country, financially. and also I guess because of the alleged wokeness. And so I think they think financially things are going to get better for them.
Can you talk a little bit more about the alleged wokeness?
Well, I think that there are some people that are very obsessed with the trans issues. So I think they want to get rid of that completely. They feel like that's somehow ruining the country. I also think it's going to be anti-gay again. I don't know if they're going to try to overturn gay marriage, but I think protections for the LGBTQ community are going to be rolled back, which I think they already started, right? With the executive actions.
What did they do with the executive actions?
I mean, they already said the federal government's not going to recognize transgender identities on their documents, right?
Yeah.
That they're only going to recognize two genders and it has to be the gender you were born with.
Were you able to put these identities on documents at this point?
I'm not sure. Do you know about that, Justin?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, I've seen it like on some medical documents where you could indicate you were non-binary or trans, but as far as the federal level, I definitely could not comment on that.
I feel like it's actively hostile towards people who are different.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you not be allowed, at least if you were born female and identify as male, why would you not be allowed to put male on your passport if you identify as male?
I think they made a very successful push in the indoctrination argument. I think indoctrinating any kind of gender identity onto a small child is a problem, and that includes saying like, well, my boy doesn't play with dolls. Trying to enforce something can do a lot more harm than good. A lot of the non-binary trans people I know, they figured that out well after they're out of their parents' houses. So then that's where the indoctrination argument comes in, right? People will say, well, they went to college, they met this gay or trans person, so that turned my son gay, that made my son a girl or whatever. Oftentimes they either didn't realize that about themselves, or maybe you as a parent were such a bad influence and so intolerant that they would never have felt safe telling you that. Like the same thing for people who find out that they're gay or lesbian way on down the road. I mean, I don't think you can really change a person's sexuality. So sometimes when people say, well, they turned my son gay, maybe they were gay all along.
Do you really think they find out later, or are they just suppressing their feelings?
I know some people that found out really late. Like it wasn't until like way after college. And they were still kind of just believing that they were like straight people, straight men dating women.
So as far as you know, they had like no inclination whatsoever that they might be gay.
Well, I mean, some of these people, they might be suppressing it massively.
Yeah. Well, don't you think that most of the people who come out late or find out late are having suppression, but maybe it's like really deep down? Because like you think that there's a certain norm, like you're supposed to like a certain sex, the opposite sex, and maybe they're just suppressing it. Like, okay, maybe you had a little twinge of something towards the same sex, but you're like, no, like that's not normal. And I like the opposite sex too. So maybe they suppress it because they don't think it's normal, at least in society. Yeah. And that's why they kind of hide it within themselves. Not hide it, but kind of suppress it down in their brains.
Yeah, because I mean, I wonder if it's just suppressed, like she's saying, because I mean, as far as, I don't know about you guys' experience, but like the second like I actually started feeling any sort of attraction, it was very obvious that I was attracted only to the opposite sex. Like I didn't have to like wonder, like I already knew. So I'm feeling like, I wonder if these people, they do get that feeling, but they know that the reaction is not going to be what they want. Yeah. So you don't even get to ever fully express it. And with time, maybe you do suppress it to the point where how you say like, oh, well, I found out. I mean, maybe I don't really think they found out. I mean, maybe they just, it's so far down there because of the fear of the reactions they're going to get.
And people telling you it's not normal.
I do think that this is my theory, that a lot of people who are afraid of their children or their friends being turned gay are so worried about it because they think that they could be turned gay. Because they might not be as straight as they think they are. That's
like
my
themselves?
Theory. Yeah.
So like gay by association in a sense?
I mean, think about it. Like if you were straight and you know that for a fact, would it ever bother you that a gay person would possibly make you gay?
No, it doesn't work that way.
But if maybe you were having some thoughts, chances are you would be afraid of it. and you'd be suppressing it.
Well, yeah, if you had thoughts at that point, you're opening yourself up to the possibility, and then things could change at that point.
Mm-hmm. My theory is that if you're homophobic, you're gay. That's it.
I do want to say about the transgender thing. I think that that's an issue that we should all talk about, people from both sides, so we can get to a good place. I don't think it's quite indoctrinating to tell a little boy they can't play with dolls, I guess. But I think you should let them do whatever they want when they're a kid
Mm-hmm.
and not enforce any kind of norm. Like, oh, you can't play with those things. Like it happens. Like you'll have a little boy who wants to dress in pink and they don't turn out to be trans or gay, right?
Yeah.
So you should just let it go. They're exploring life. But at the same time, like, you do have to understand that there are transgender people.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't want to tell people like, oh, those people are insane. They're mentally ill. That's not a thing. Because it is a thing. I mean, I remember it being a thing all the way back to when I was in junior high. I've had patients that have been transgender. Like before it was really this big hot topic. I mean, there are those people.
Yeah, there was transgender when we were growing up. I remember we'd see him at the store sometimes, and I was just like, I was confused. But I mean, didn't confuse me to become trans. I was just like, that's not normal to me at this moment. But when I grew up, I was like, oh, okay, that's what that person was trying to be.
Yeah, and it doesn't really affect your life one way or another, right?
Right. You just knew that these people were different. It's like, okay.
And it's still pretty much the same experience I've had even from being a child to now. Like, I don't see a ton of those people down here anyway. But like I said, I mean, this idea that it's just everywhere, I think is just part of them embellishing things to scare us.
Well, I do think that there probably are more people that are feeling comfortable. Well, at least before Trump #2 term, people were feeling more comfortable with coming out. And maybe that's why there's some people that are coming out that wouldn't have come out before.
Yeah, of course. I mean, everything became more open. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like, if you listen to like Fox and to right-wing media and X, it sounds like they're trying to make you believe like the majority of people are gay now or trans when it's like a very tiny percentage of people.
Yeah. It's very small.
There was that poll a while back that was about like perceived versus actual demographics. I want to pull that up.
It had a lot of different things too about like how many people they thought were wealthy, how many people they thought were millionaires, and all of it was like overestimated.
Okay, so Americans tend to overestimate the actual size of minorities, especially those with the smallest numbers, and sometimes by a lot. The report's header summarizes, quote, small subgroups of the population seem much larger to many Americans. For example, those who have a household income over $1 million is very near 0%. It's in like the percentage of a percent, like point something. But people who did this poll assumed that 20% of Americans have a household income of over $1 million.
That's crazy.
That's really high.
Like people in America who are surveyed think that 1 in 5 people has over $1 million as income, as a household annually.
If I had to guess and somebody had asked me that, I would have said maybe 5%, which is still
I feel
way
like
off.
if I thought those things, I would be very resentful of people around me because I was thinking like most people around me, well, not most, but a lot of people around me were millionaires.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 in 5. Every fifth person is wealthy.
Yeah.
That's not even close.
Yeah.
Though I will say there are a lot of wealthy people who understate their wealth too.
Sure.
Like I definitely met quite a few people, and I've been in their homes and their neighborhoods and how nice they are. And you ask them about their upbringing, they're like, "Oh, we were comfortable." So you weren't comfortable. You're rich. You're rich. Your family went on like European vacations on a regular basis.
Yeah, comedians always touch on that. They're like, get the fuck out of here, comfortable. It's like only rich people say that.
Yeah. Second item in this poll. Polls people estimated that 21% of Americans are transgender. Once again, 1 in 5. The actual number is 1%.
Yeah,
That's what I've
crazy.
been saying. It's a tiny percentage.
Yeah. I do wish that people who are anti-trans and anti-gay would realize that your kid, regardless of what you do, could be gay or trans. And it would be much better for your kid, if that's the case, to feel comfortable and tell you early and not go through all this strife.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't control it. You can't control that your kid might be trans or gay. I mean, you think you can, but you're not controlling it. You can't control who they really are.
Yeah, do you want some more of these proportion polls?
Sure.
All right.
Does it have like the percentage of people that people think are gay?
Are gay or lesbian? Estimated proportion 30%. So you're saying nearly 1 in 3 people are gay or lesbian.
Okay, I'm going to say on that one, 5%.
3%.
Oh, wow.
Though a lot of this would probably have to be self-reported. I think
Yeah.
there might be some selection bias in that some people who are actually gay or lesbian might not say
Yeah.
it.
But it's probably less than 10%.
Yeah, I'm sure it's less than 10%.
Well, total, because there's also are bisexual on this, and so
Oh, okay.
and people assume that the estimated proportion was 29% when the actual proportion is 4%.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't even make sense. Like, you're not around people where 1 in 3 are gay. Doesn't make sense to think that.
All right, here's a fun one. Are vegan or vegetarian?
Less than 1%.
Actually, 5% are vegan or vegetarian, but the perceived proportion was 30% of people were
What is it
vegan or
with the 20
vegetarian.
to 30% for everything?
Yeah.
I guess that feels like a safe number. It's
Yeah.
not a majority.
Yeah, but it's like way too high.
It's too many to make them uncomfortable.
So this is actually the one with the widest swing. The number of Americans who are military veterans,
Is it
Oh,
15%?
10%.
6%.
That's the real number?
Yeah. The people polled thought that 40%
What?
of
That's way too
Americans
high.
are military veterans.
4 out of 10 people go to the military.
2 out of 5.
Mm.
Also perceive that 37% of people have an advanced degree, when that's only 12%.
Advanced degree is what? Just a bachelor's?
No, it's after bachelor's. These numbers are wild to me. According to this, 12% of Americans are black, but the estimated proportion was 41%. And 17% of Americans are Hispanic, and the estimated proportion was 39%. Like,
Crazy.
I think there's a lot of fear mongering that's going on, especially in terms of replacement and like DEI, when in fact, like a lot of these people are not making up most of the population.
Do you want to speak about birthright citizenship?
Sounds like you have some thoughts on it.
So I'm in law school now, and I've taken constitutional law 1 and 2. And after taking that class, I think I learned that the Supreme Court justices can really interpret the Constitution however they want. It can be completely opposite of each other. And I feel that if you look at the language, some of those justices, like Alito and Thomas, might say that the birthright citizenship wasn't intended for illegal aliens who are essentially criminals in this country. I feel like there's always a way. And I think in this particular situation, they might say the executive action is constitutional. I may be really pessimistic about this, but that's my take on it.
What issue do you think they're claiming is being solved by removing this birthright citizenship?
It's a fear factor. Like, you can't just come in here and have an anchor baby anymore. Like, what are you doing? You're going to get deported and your kid's not going to be a citizen.
So were you allowed to stay here with said anchor baby?
I feel like they didn't push to deport people who had a citizen child.
Don't you feel like they could deport the child and still give them the citizenship and allow the child to return when they were older?
That would make sense, but they're specifically trying to disincentivize people coming into this country. So they're trying to make it as terrible as possible. They're instilling fear, and they're saying it's pointless for you to have your baby here because the baby is not going to become a citizen.
I still think doing that would curb some of them coming in anyway, because you're not going to get to stay. You're going to come just to get that citizenship, and then you have to go right back anyway.
Yeah.
Well, not every country in the world has birthright citizenship. I mean, quite a few do, especially in North and South America. But there are a lot of spots, like China doesn't have birthright citizenship. A lot of countries in Africa and the Middle East don't. But a lot of countries in Europe do have it, but with some restrictions on it as well.
But aren't some of these rights what allegedly make us the greatest country in the world?
Allegedly, but
Yeah.
now we're anti-immigrant. Even though we're a country of immigrants, now we've become anti-immigrant. And so now it's about applying maximal pressure on these immigrants and scaring them and making it hard for them.
Growing up in like grade school, you would have these history classes that would talk about the history of immigration. You know, especially after some of the terrible world events like World War I and World War II, you had a lot of people who were displaced. You heard about how important Ellis Island was as an immigration processing area. You heard about how the U.S. was a melting pot. The melting pot was always the metaphor that you heard about the country as an asset, as a strength to the country, and it would not have been possible without immigration.
But constitutional law kind of scares you because you know what they'll say? It's been enough time. It's been enough years. We don't need this anymore. They did that with the affirmative action. I don't remember the case off the top of my head, but there was an opinion that talked about how in 25 years or so you wouldn't need it anymore because things would get to the point that it just wasn't necessary anymore. We'd be equal enough.
Okay.
How much of an impact do you think removing the DEI hiring practice from the federal government is going to actually have?
I think you're going to harm minorities and women. You're going to start disadvantaging people who didn't have all the privilege growing up and people who aren't looked at because they'd rather take a man over a woman, for example.
Well, did it make them have to interview certain people?
I'm not sure because that's kind of like how other things work, right? Like the NFL, where you have to interview like some minority candidates. But I'm not sure how the federal government dealt with it exactly.
In the NFL's case, you just had to interview, like, let's say a black coach, but you didn't have to hire him. You just had to say you did it. So how do we know that wasn't already happening in this situation?
Because at first I would think that the greatest advantage would just to get that opportunity, to get folks of color in the door in order to put them in the hiring pipeline, because that's what it comes down to. Because your social circle is so small and oftentimes pretty homogenized.
But this affirmative action never said you actually had to hire a woman or a black person
No,
or
it
Hispanic,
never
did
says
it?
that.
So maybe it won't have as big an impact as they think.
I found the case that I was talking about. In 2003, in Grutter versus Bollinger, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. In that case, Sandra Day O'Connor said that in 25 years, we would not need affirmative action. She stated, "We expect that 25 years from now, the use of racial preferences will no longer be necessary to further the interest in student body diversity approved today." So they could just use that same argument. Oh, we don't need birthright citizenship anymore. Things have changed. And now we've got all these anchor babies and all these criminals here. I mean, allegedly. I'm not saying I agree with that argument about the criminals and the anchor babies. But they can just say, we don't need this anymore. And it's actually like harmful to the country.
Can we pull up any statistics on how many immigrants are actually criminals?
It sounds like a Justin task.
Googling right now.
And is that one of the percentages you had on that survey?
I don't know if it was like a specific immigrants criminals thing.
I mean, no one's saying that there aren't immigrants who are criminals,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's very much exaggerated that so much of them are criminals. I think most of them are non-criminals who are just wanting to make a better life for themselves.
Okay, here's something from an analysis of Texas arrest records between 2012 and 2018. So overall, the crime rates for undocumented immigrants were lower than that of documented immigrants, which were also lower than that of U.S.-born citizens.
But honestly, that tracks with what I've experienced in my life. Like, we've been around so many illegal immigrants all our life because there are so many immigrants, illegal immigrants, especially in South Texas. And they are just the types of people who are wanting a better life. They keep their heads down. They work hard. They do the jobs people don't want to do. Like, they clean the toilets. They mow the lawns. They do the dirty work. Like, I just have never experienced this in this area where there are so many illegal immigrants. I have not experienced them being criminals.
Yeah.
Wasn't it also part of they kind of want to stay under the radar because if you
exactly.
get caught, you're going back to the country.
Yeah, your country sucked so much. You want to be here. You want to keep your head down. You want to make things better for you and your kids.
Yeah, so like per 100,000 persons, you are about 2.5 times more likely to be a criminal than an immigrant is, as of 2018, from those
Yeah.
statistics from that study in Texas.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, that's what I've experienced my whole life. And now somehow they created this narrative on TV and on social media that like these people are just like literally at gas stations just trying to murder you. like, like I don't know what world that is. It's not the real world.
I don't know. I feel like there is not a lot of self-awareness about the fact that a lot of liberals and liberals of color are skeptical and do not trust a lot of white men, even though white men are the most likely perpetrators of mass violence in this country. But
Yeah.
but at the same time, you might want to say, well, that's not everyone. That's a small minority of people. It's the same thing. I don't know. I'm scared for a lot of people. There's this false equivalency that someone's immigration status defines who they are in terms of their quality as a person, when a lot of them are here just because of factors that are completely out of their control. You can be a piece of crap no matter your nationality,
Yeah.
but also most people aren't evil.
I mean, it's pure racism, I feel like. It's like this racism battle, like saying these people are less than, they're terrible, they're criminals, they don't want to do any work, when that's never been my experience my whole life. Like, I feel like they work so hard, the ones that I've known, and they don't make a lot of money.
I know when there were a bunch of Venezuelans in Chicago, and there still are, a lot of them are trying their best, and they're here with their kids. They're here with their families, trying to have a better life. And they'll go to like the Lowe's and the Home Depots and try to pick up work, honest work.
Do you think that people understand that in countries like Mexico and in Central America, you can't just get a college education if
Yeah.
you're poor? Like, there's not the help that we get, like with grants and scholarships. Like, a lot of times you have to come from money to get that college education. So as a result, of course, you're going to get people who can't get out of the poverty. They're going to come uneducated. I mean, they're trying to make a better life. Maybe they're not educated, but maybe their kids will be
Yeah.
once they get their bearings here.
This is like one of the things that I keep on thinking about when it comes to voting for a lot of the conservatives that folks have voted for lately. The Republicans have won on a lot of ideological issues. They've successfully harnessed fear in terms of fear for people's families, fear for people's children, and made these ideological issues without actually changing the economic realities of the people that
Yeah.
they're supposed to serve. They might give them the tiniest of tax breaks, but that's not sustainable. That's not what the American dream is built on. The American dream is about trying to ascend the socioeconomic ladder. It's not that you necessarily need every resource that's provided to you, but a lot of people are voting for politicians and legislation that is actively trying to keep them down.
Well, the American dream is also tied to what I was saying about those people that they're not able to get an education in their country because if you don't have money, it's going to be hard. Like here, if you're the poorest person, if you work hard in school, you can get a college education. You can go to med school. You can go to law school. You can get a PhD. You can start to at least be solidly middle class with just an education here.
But oftentimes we'll hear that, well, people are wasting their money on college. They're getting it on useless liberal arts degrees.
And didn't we just look up stats the other day? And it's like one of the lowest degrees as far as people attaining that's out there.
Yeah.
I don't know how recent this list is, but I feel like these kinds of numbers would take a while to change over time. Here are the most popular college majors provided by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Number 1 is business administration. Number 2 is accounting. That's a real job that people can do. Nursing is number 3. A lot of people still going into this despite the fact that this healthcare system is squeezing every single person dry out of the work that they do. Number 4 is psychology. Number 5 is communications, which is kind of broad. Marketing is number 6. And number 7 is education. So I'm like trying to find like where is like a useless degree in here.
Well, there's technically no useless degree because I think any degree can get you into teaching. So you could at least become a teacher with like a little bit of training to get a teacher certificate. And there are certain areas like here, I think that a teacher is a pretty comfortable job as far as like the income and the benefits. So even like a allegedly worthless degree is going to give you opportunities to do better than you would have in Mexico if you came from a
Yeah.
poor family.
I will say that with the teacher argument, I feel that's more of a problem with how poorly we pay teachers and provide resources
Yeah.
for them in this country. I think there are a lot of people who are well qualified to be teachers and specialized teachers in things like history and English and science because
Yeah.
that's what their degrees were actually in. But districts do not want to pay for that experience.
Imagine if the federal government and the state governments really pushed to pay teachers really well. Like, you'd get people even like me willing to teach. Like, oh,
What would you
I'm a
teach?
doctor. I definitely teach biology. I could teach health class. Imagine me teaching health class. That'd be amazing. I mean, my kid already apparently has some medical knowledge just from absorbing what she hears from me. So imagine if I actually taught it.
Nathan, how do you feel about how your English degree has helped you in your life?
Helped me in my life
Have you used it at all?
only to get into law school. I mean, as far as anything else, I have not. People say that I've wasted it, but I mean, it's still there. I could still decide to do something else. But it's one of those things that did open my mind to seeing a lot of different perspectives instead of just believing what I was brought up with. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's not just the paper, it's the education, the opening of your mind, the critical thinking, the reading, the writing. My kid claims she wants to work at Target, and I still want her to go to college, even if she wants to work at Target, because I think the experience will change her in a positive way, and maybe she'll also have an amazing experience at the college. So I'm kind of pushing her to still go to college, even if she's allegedly going to work at Target.
I mean, she could work for Target Corporate.
Yeah, I did tell her that. I mean, I feel like an 11-year-old probably is not going to be like stuck on working at Target 10 years from now, but we'll see.
Yeah, I remember when I was a child, there were a couple of things that I thought I wanted to do that I probably wouldn't do now. I think I wanted to
Yeah.
be a geologist. I think I wanted.
sounds cool.
I think I found writings at some point that said that when I grew up, I wanted to do manual labor.
Yeah. I mean, manual labor can be very lucrative.
hey, I do that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think if you run your business correctly, I think a plumber, I think an electrician makes more money than a teacher, for example.
So actually, yes, when you asked me about my English degree, I didn't think about that. People love that I have a degree and I'm doing manual labor for them. I don't know what
Why?
it makes them trust me for some odd reason. Like I have some extra level of intelligence because I got a college degree.
So these aren't the Fox News people then, because I feel like the Fox News people are actively anti-degrees, and that's actually anti-trusting you.
I don't know. I just think it's the combination. They're like, what? Like, how is this possible?
Yeah. I think there's a lot that you learn in college that is good for you. I remember just at UT Pan American, like taking philosophy classes was really interesting. That made me wonder though, I'm like, wait a minute, some of these ideas, that's kind of the ideas behind God. Like, wait a minute, is there a God? Like you're describing like the prime mover, for example, and maybe it's just all this being that's not a God. I'm not sure what's going on here, but philosophy kind of freaked me out.
Philosophy was definitely interesting, but for me, and I really wanted to be an anthropologist at some point, so I minored in anthropology. And the courses in anthropology, the actual like one of the main professors there was from Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
Learning about cultures and stuff, and like all the differences, and being open to that kind of opened my eyes more than anything.
If anything, it scared me. Like, what's the meaning of life now? I don't know.
Well, that's
happens when we die?
philosophy. That's philosophy is very interesting. I was
Yeah.
just talking about like culture and anthropology, and that
Yeah.
definitely makes you see like, I mean, once you understand like a culture, like those beliefs are instilled from the beginning, like you can kind of appreciate and maybe understand where they're coming from versus
Yeah.
being like, oh, that's just not what I do, so I'm not gonna like it.
Well, and then he also got to travel to Europe during his college, right?
Yeah, I did a study abroad in London.
While it was still part of Europe.
Yes. So he got that experience too from going to college. I mean, maybe at this point he wouldn't have traveled anywhere beyond Hawaii if he hadn't gone to college.
That's probably true.
And he actually went to London before me. I just went this past summer.
And how'd you enjoy that?
I'm obsessed with it now. I want to
So-
go back.
So my recommendation was good.
Yes. Also Switzerland. We're obsessed with Switzerland. We want to go back.
What was your favorite thing that you ate in those countries?
I don't know. I'm not like that much of a foodie. I was more about just the environment.
Shame. Shame.
And when I went, didn't have a lot of money, so it was just eating like the most basic stuff. So I definitely couldn't be a good judge on that.
The Indian food in England is really good, especially in London.
I had Indian food. I also had some Burmese food.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just tried everything.
I actually had some really good, I think it was Lebanese food when I was in London.
We went to a Lebanese place at a friend's recommendation in Montreal when we were there, and it was awesome.
Yeah, that was the highlight of the trip for me, actually, was the Lebanese.
Well, some of these major cities like Philly, for example, will have some of these types of foods. So I imagine that Justin has opportunities to experience some good foods in Chicago.
Yes. Yes. Next time you come over, I want to take the family out and see if we can all experience Sunwa, which is a spot in Chicago that does a Peking barbecue duck. And that's the kind of
Sounds
thing
good.
that you have to split between a couple of people because it's good, it's fatty, it's hearty.
Well, we might go in July for a concert.
Well, if Rosie goes, you already know she's not going to try anything.
Hey, sometimes people like what they like.
Yeah. Well, it's good that I'm a trash can because I'll pretty much try anything.
Yeah, she actually ordered from the kids menu when we were on the cruise.
Rosie.
Yeah, I think she got like some chicken nuggets or tenders. And I was like, what are you doing? They have lobster. They have like prime rib.
Sometimes you know what you like.
No culture, no culture.
I guess we should all try and figure out how to be a little bit more cultured, learn about people who are different from ourselves. Maybe try some new foods. Open your
Yeah.
mind. Love your neighbor. Just like Jesus said.
Go to college if it's an affordable thing for you.
I don't know if Jesus said that, but. All right. See you later.
Until next time.